Translator Netter Darkgem. Chinmu's gaze settled upon the drop of dew resting upon his fingertip. The sight left his heart faintly bewildered. Could a sword art truly reach such a realm? The sword technique Village Chief had displayed this time was unlike those of the past. Back then, when he revealed sword-treading mountains and rivers, what he imparted had been the flawless execution of every step, guiding Chinmu through the entire process so he could learn how the sword technique should be carried out. Yet, although the sword-treading mountains and rivers before him now was the very same art he had once been taught, something extra had been woven into it, a subtle change that rendered it completely different. It was as though heaven and earth were being brought forth into existence, and from that birth, all things beneath the heavens emerged. Dowsek's Tao sword relied upon algebraic principles to analyze the myriad phenomena of nature, and the 14 writings of Tao sword then reconstructed the workings of the world, granting it power beyond imagination. Village Chief's sword technique, however, seemed to tread the opposite path. As his sword moved, it was as though he was creating all things beneath the heavens, and his sword skills served to interpret them. It was difficult to declare which path was superior, yet in terms of conception, the distinction was clear. The Tao sword followed the principle that Tao follows nature, while Village Chief's sword picture brought nature itself into being. In that sense, the conception behind sword picture should stand above the other. To interpret nature was a form of learning, a disciple studying the world. Creation, however, was the act of bringing something forth from nothingness. According to Dowsek's summary of the Tao, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, and 3 gives birth to the myriad things. Village Chief's sword picture had already grasped the method by which all things are produced. The Tao sword of Dowsek merely interpreted the countless phenomena of the world, exhausting every possibility in its analysis. Chinmu focused his gaze upon the droplet of dew. It shimmered with crystal clarity, gleaming with incomparable brilliance. Upon its surface, he could actually see the reflections of boundless universes appearing in exquisite detail. Cyan Heaven's eyes awaken. Layer after layer of formation markings whirled within Chinmu's pupils. Activating Cyan Heaven's eyes, he attempted to peer into the minute sword lights that formed the dew. Yet what disappointed him was that even with such divine sight, he could discern nothing at all. However, he soon discovered something wondrous. The dew reflected the world outside it, and when he examined the reflection with care, he could perceive even more intricate details within it. Through that tiny droplet, he gazed upon Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, who had entered a mysterious realm. His eyes appeared blank and unfocused. Yet when Chinmu observed them through the dew, he could see countless transformations unfolding within the arrays of his pupils. Looking even deeper, he seemed to behold an entire world being born within those shifting formations. Chinmu stirred his spirit and continued sustaining the operation of Cyan Heaven's eyes. As he gazed further, everything became clearer still. The transformations within the arrays of eternal peace, Imperial Preceptor's eyes seemed to open an entirely new world, revealing the wonders of creation itself. He felt as though he had personally stepped into that world, born within Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes. There he experienced the comprehension of the Imperial Preceptor himself. He was comprehending the sword path, and he was indeed a man overflowing with talent. No wonder that Heavenly Devil Patriarch, Old Tao Master, and Old Rulai had shown sympathy the moment they laid eyes upon him, and had passed down the supreme arts of their respective sacred grounds to him. Chinmu knew that in terms of comprehension and aptitude, he could not compare with him. When Imperial Preceptor had first witnessed Village Chief's sword path, he had instantly grasped new insights by analogy and forged his own sword path. Faced with such heaven-defying talent and aptitude, Chinmu acknowledged that his own ability fell short. Yet now Chinmu was using the power of the dew to enter Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's state of comprehension, borrowing it to refine himself. Truly marvelous! When Village Chief saw this sight, he sighed ruefully toward Cripple. Although Chinmu's aptitude and comprehension cannot rival those of a saint who appears once every 500 years, this quick wit and diligence of his are things that even such a saint cannot match. Cripple's face shone with pride. As expected of the one I taught. It is as expected of the one we taught, Village Chief added as well. Cripple then asked, "How do you view Imperial Preceptor? Can he become the human emperor?" Village Chief fell silent for a moment before speaking softly. "He is not inferior to me, and in the future he may even surpass me." Cripple looked at him doubtfully. "I know you never finish your sentences, but why don't you say everything you mean at once?" Village Chief sighed. "I am very strong and have reached the extreme of sword arts. But look at what severed my limbs. A sword." Cripple fell silent, and Village Chief continued. "My limbs were cut off by someone wielding a sword. Eternal peace. Imperial Preceptor, this saint who appears once every 500 years, might be stronger than me. Yet if he does not encounter some fortuitous opportunity, he will still be trapped at the Divine Bridge realm like I was. If he cannot connect the Divine Bridge, there will be no path to the next realm, and he will meet the same fate as I did." Cripple's body trembled. He glanced at Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, then turned his gaze toward Chin Mu. With a questioning expression, he asked in a low voice, "After you and I die, if Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor also dies, what will become of Chin Mu?" "I originally hoped that he would be an ordinary person, a normal man who would live a peaceful life. Yet again and again he has exceeded my expectations, destroying each plan I made for him. I cannot determine what his future will be. At first I believed he was merely an ordinary human, but ever since I went in search of Carefree Village, I realized that he might possess something extraordinary." Cripple broke into a grin. "Ordinary? Village Chief, you're growing muddle-headed. Has there ever been an ordinary overlord body? Muir possesses the overlord body, so how could he possibly be ordinary?" Village Chief's expression froze for a moment. Then he forced a laugh and continued. "That's right. I had forgotten that he possesses the overlord body. Naturally, someone like him will do things beyond the ordinary. Yet this time, he has still surpassed my expectations. I thought he would comprehend something profound from my sword path. Yet instead, he used that droplet of dew to observe the entire process of eternal peace, Imperial Preceptor's comprehension. This is too. He did not know how to continue. Cripple laughed loudly. "Too inconceivable." Village Chief nodded, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "Indeed, too inconceivable, Muir, this little fellow. Once I thought he would never awaken his spirit embryo, yet he did. I thought he would remain forever at spirit embryo realm without progress, yet he discovered the subsequent technique of the overlord body, ahem, the Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique. I thought he would be like everyone else, yet he defeated all 360 Hall Masters of Heavenly Devil Cult and became their young cult master. I thought he would not be able to master what we taught him, yet he learned everything splendidly, advancing with momentum that even surpasses us." He smiled bitterly. "I thought I would never acknowledge him and would never pass my legacy to him, yet in the end I acknowledged him and entrusted my legacy to him. I even handed over my burden and responsibility." He recalled the past with a faint urge to laugh. "At the beginning, I did not trust him and believed he would accomplish nothing extraordinary. Yet every time he raises my expectations higher and higher, in the end I realize that he is the one I trust most. In truth, as we raised him, we ourselves also grew." Cripple asked with a smile, "So what are you trying to say?" The wrinkles on Village Chief's forehead gathered together as he revealed a sincere smile from the depths of his heart. "What I mean is that compared with Imperial Preceptor, I hold Muir, whom we raised together, in even higher regard. The child delivered to us by Surging River in the darkness 15 years ago was born extraordinary. His aptitude is not as astonishing as Imperial Preceptor's, nor is his comprehension as heaven-defying, but there is something about him that I cannot see through." "It's the Overlord body." Cripple exclaimed excitedly. The smile on Village Chief's face froze, and countless emotions flickered within his eyes as he muttered, "Perhaps it is indeed because of the Overlord body. If an ordinary person creates a miracle once, it may be chance. Twice may be luck. But when it happens 3 or 4 times, it can no longer be called chance or luck. Instead, it proves that he is truly different from others, an Overlord body worthy of our respect. Our Muir has inherited the strengths of us failures, who hide within the great ruins, and he has learned from our lessons. He will surely walk farther than any of us. Meanwhile, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor continued comprehending the path, his understanding growing deeper and deeper. Through the droplet of dew that allowed him to observe this process, Chinmu witnessed the entire transformation. As Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor comprehended the sword path, Chinmu also reaped immense benefits, for the man stood in a realm far above his own. Although Chinmu remained only at the most rudimentary stage of skill, by borrowing the process of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor comprehending the path, he was able to glimpse the domain of the sword path itself. The benefits he gained from this were beyond measure. Compared with a giant like Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Chinmu was merely a small child. Yet this small child could stand upon the shoulders of that giant and behold a far broader horizon. Even though everyone present at Qingmen Pass was studying village chiefs' sword-treading mountains and rivers, only a handful could grasp the supreme mysteries hidden within it. Most of them could only comprehend a move or two. Though such gains might already sustain them for a lifetime, none of them received benefits anywhere near as vast as Chinmu's. For him, it was equivalent to studying the ultimate mysteries of swordsmanship from both village chief and imperial preceptor, the two great sword gods. After a long time, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor finally awoke from his state of comprehension. An indescribable bearing now surrounded him. Once one stands upon the highest peak, all mountains can be seen with a single glance. Now that he had stepped onto the summit of sword arts, when he looked upon all the sword techniques and divine arts of the world, a faint sense of loneliness filled his heart. There seemed to be no sword skill or divine art in this world that could still stir his interest. A trace of sorrow appeared upon Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's face. Yet soon afterward, he sensed something unusual. Someone was actually peering into him, into his Dao heart, into his very process of comprehending the path. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was startled. He followed the sensation and looked toward its source, and his gaze landed upon Chinmu. He was momentarily stunned. Then he burst into laughter and shook his head. I see. Heavenly Saint Cultmaster truly excels at using others for his own gain. Chinmu immediately felt his gaze upon him. A faint sting appeared in his eyes, and he quickly withdrew his sight. When their gazes met, Chinmu revealed a radiant smile. Heavenly King, forgive me for disturbing you. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor smiled in return. It is nothing. Suddenly, the mountains and rivers vanished, and every sword light disappeared. Village Chief withdrew his sword light and said to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, You have already attained the path. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor bowed respectfully. If not for Dao Brothers' guidance, I would not know when I might have entered the realm of the path. The arms and legs that Village Chief had formed with vital chi suddenly dispersed. He said, Come forward and examine the severed portions of my limbs. I have always left these sword scars untouched and never erased them. In the future, you may encounter the god who inflicted these wounds upon me. Eternal Peace. Imperial Preceptor stepped forward solemnly and squatted down to examine the wounds carefully. What he saw were sword scars left upon the old human emperor by a blade stronger than his own. A swordsman who was himself proficient with the sword had been wounded by another sword. In the Imperial Preceptor's eyes, Village Chief's sword skill had already reached the realm of the path, which meant it stood above his own. It was only because Village Chief's chi and blood were exhausted and no longer flourishing that he appeared weaker. Yet, from those injuries, Imperial Preceptor could perceive sword skills and a sword path that were even more formidable. Do you have confidence in defeating him? Village Chief asked. Not now, but perhaps in the future. You passed your sword path to me and enlightened my sword skills, so you are my teacher. Therefore, would you entrust the burden you carry to me? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked with a grave expression. Village Chief shook his head and smiled. There is no need to give it to you. I have already entrusted it to someone else. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's heart trembled violently. Then realization dawned upon him. He looked toward Chinmu and asked in a low voice, The new human emperor? Translator Ninetales. Editor Dark Gem. The new human emperor. Eternal Peace. Imperial Preceptor's gaze became intricate and unfathomable. like deep waters concealing countless currents. Within his heart, a trace of murderous intent even flickered into existence. As the human emperor of the previous generation, Village Chief had never cared for fame or fortune, nor had he coveted worldly authority. The horizon of his ambition stretched far beyond such matters. His eyes had never settled upon the power of the mortal realm, and thus the world revered him. But would Qin Mu, this newly chosen human emperor, walk the same path as Village Chief? The human emperors wielded power vast beyond measure, authority surpassing even that of Emperor Yanfeng himself. Their prestige towered higher than that of the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor as well. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had once journeyed to Little Jade Capital and had glimpsed certain hidden secrets, among them the might vested in the human emperor. He and Emperor Yanfeng had long sought to unite every sect and sacred ground beneath heaven's canopy, yet few were willing to bow their heads before them. However, the human emperor could accomplish what they could not. He possessed the authority to command the submission of the sects. The power of the human emperor was not seized through combat, but was bestowed upon him by the great sects and sacred lands themselves. Even Little Jade Capital, should they learn that Qin Mu had become the new human emperor, would likely stand behind him in support. If Qin Mu were to become intoxicated by authority, he could seize the throne of Eternal Peace itself, utterly shattering the grand design that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yanfeng had painstakingly built. If you and Emperor Yanfeng fail, the human emperor will still remain, preserving a sliver of hope for a future resurgence, Village Chief said calmly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's heart trembled, and he withdrew his gaze. I will not fail. Village Chief smiled faintly. I hope you will not fail. I do not wish for Muir to suffer. At that moment, Qin Mu approached them, causing the two men to fall silent and end their conversation. Eternal Peace. Imperial Preceptor's eyes settled once more upon the youth, and a strange sensation stirred within his heart. This boy of 15 or 16 years, standing before him with an innocent demeanor, could be said to hold the greatest authority beneath the heavens. Yet, he himself remained utterly unaware of it. Qin Mu was the current cult master of the Heavenly Devil Cult, an imperial academician of the Imperial College, and the successor of Disabled Elderly Village. Yet the greatest identity he possessed now was that of the present human emperor. His authority stood even higher than that of the emperor and the imperial preceptor, yet Qin Mu seemed completely ignorant of what such a title truly signified. It was an exceedingly bizarre situation. Cripple noticed Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's expression and secretly felt delighted. The Imperial Preceptor probably has no idea that Muir possesses the treasure that symbolizes the imperial authority of the Ling family. If he knew the Emperor's disc was in Qin Mu's hands, he would probably leap up in fury. Cripple had given the Emperor's disc to Qin Mu purely for amusement. He himself had studied that jade disc for several decades, yet had never managed to comprehend the mysterious wonders within it, so keeping it had proven useless. Nevertheless, he clearly understood what the Emperor's disc represented. This jade disc had been bestowed upon the Ling family by a god, symbolizing the divine granting of imperial authority to them. It was said that the Ling family's 9 Dragons Monarch technique had been comprehended from the Emperor's disc. When the disc had been stolen, it had caused an enormous uproar. Yet Emperor Yanfeng had suppressed the matter, ensuring that outsiders never learned of it. Thus, no one would ever suspect that this Emperor's disc had actually fallen into Qin Mu's hands. With the Emperor's disc and the human Emperor's seal together, Qin Mu was the individual with the greatest authority beneath heaven, yet he himself remained completely unaware of this fact. If this foolish boy were to learn of it, he would surely be so shocked his jaw would drop. The thought filled Cripple with delight. Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Works, Shan Yushin, walked over and first greeted Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor before lowering his voice to speak to Qin Mu. Cult Master, the cannons on the flying ship suffered heavy strain during the Great Battle and require repairs. Might I invite Cult Master to take a look? Your forging skills are no inferior to mine, so why would you need me to go? Qin Mu asked in puzzlement. There are problems with the formation markings inside the cannon barrels. After 8 or 9 activations, the barrel becomes red hot and the formation markings within the cannon are disturbed, drastically weakening the formation's power and even causing explosions. Shan Yoshin was the hall master of heavenly works, so he quickly led the way while continuing. During this battle against the barbarian Dai Empire, more than a dozen cannons have already exploded, resulting in the deaths of over 100 divine arts practitioners. The formation markings on these cannons were designed jointly by the Hall of Heavenly Works and the Hall of Array Elements. I suspect it may be due to fatigue in the black gold. It might be unable to endure such strain. Qinmu shook his head. I do not believe it is fatigue in the black gold. It should be an issue with the formation causing thermal decay. Let me take a look. Thermal decay? Shan Yushin's eyes brightened as he praised him. That is possible, but the design from the Hall of Array Elements is already perfect. I fear it will be difficult to improve. Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor, raised his eyebrows when he saw the two of them departing. The cult master is actually so proficient in the path of forging treasures that even Assistant Minister Shan must consult him, he said in astonishment. Cripple smiled. Muir learned forging in the past. Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor, cast him a glance and remembered how this shameless old thief had once defiled his bed and even urinated in his teapot. His face turned faintly green. Furthermore, the painting of the sword god's back had also been stolen by this scoundrel. Qinmu and Shan Yushin boarded a flying ship and saw numerous officials from the Ministry of Works bustling about as they repaired damaged sections of the vessel. Several cannons had already exploded, and dark bloodstains still clung to the cannon barrels. These cannons were known as True Origin cannons. Merchant ships possessed none of them, and although Fan Yunxiao had dearly wished to obtain several, they could not be purchased on the market. Qinmu first inspected the origin point of the explosion, then examined the type of energy that had caused it. Afterward, he inspected the fractured metal section before checking the batteries. He murmured to himself, aside from the forging flaws, the formations are also incorrect. However, modifying them would be extremely difficult. With war imminent, we lack the time to reforge the batteries and reconstruct the formations. In that case, we can only alter the cannon itself. In my view, ring-shaped treasures should be installed at the cannon's opening and deep within its bore to concentrate the light. He sliced off a large piece of metal from the cannon's body and melted the black gold using his vital qi, forging it directly on the spot. Numerous officials from the Ministry of Works gathered around to watch him forge the treasure. They were filled with admiration and quickly brought out paper and brushes to record his forging methods. Before long, Qinmu forged 2 rings and inscribed formation markings upon them. The formations he engraved upon the rings were heaven markings from the 9 Heaven's Eyes Awakening technique that Blind had once taught him. The 2 rings resembled the irises of an eye, only lacking a pupil. One ring was placed deep within the cannon's bore, while the other was installed at its opening. Qinmu transformed his vermilion bird vital qi into blazing flames and linked the formation markings of the True Origin cannon with the formations upon the 2 rings as he said, Hallmaster Shan, try activating the True Origin cannon. The True Origin cannon drew its power from the flying ship's pill furnaces. After improvements had been made to those furnaces, the True Origin cannons were capable of unleashing their maximum strength. Shan Yoshin immediately ordered the soldiers to ignite the furnace and lift the ship into the sky. The flying ship hovered in midair and fired toward the duck-tongue zone below. A beam of light, far brighter than before, shot forth in a straight line and struck a barbarian D Empire soldier who had been cleaning up the battlefield. That soldier had relied on his speed to plunder treasures from the corpses scattered across the field. Yet he had not expected a beam of light to descend upon him. The light pierced straight through his body, and his corpse collapsed onto the ground. The officials aboard the flying ship stood frozen in shock. They looked at one another, seeing the same astonishment reflected in each other's eyes. Originally, the True Origin cannon could only reach 30 miles, but now it could actually strike targets over 100 miles away. Shan Yushin personally adjusted the battery once more and fired again. Another beam of light shot outward, and another soldier of the barbarian Dai Empire collapsed to the ground, dying an unnatural death. The remaining soldiers of the barbarian Dai Empire immediately fled in terror. Shan Yusin continued firing repeatedly, killing them one after another. None escaped alive, leaving only their mounts galloping back alone toward the mountain pass on the opposite side. Shan Yukin touched the cannon barrel and exclaimed in astonishment, "After firing 17 times, the barrel is still cool. Imperial Preceptor! Imperial Preceptor! Quickly invite the Imperial Preceptor here." Moments later, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor arrived aboard the ship with a questioning expression. Shan Yusin could hardly conceal his excitement as he bowed. "Imperial Preceptor, we can now conquer the barbarian Dai Empire." Eternal Peace, Imperial Preceptor's heart trembled violently, and his expression turned grim. "Assistant Minister Shan, there is no room for jokes in the military." Shan Yusin smiled broadly. "Imperial Preceptor, I am absolutely not joking. Previously, the True Origin cannons on our flying ships could only shoot 30 miles. On battlefields filled with experts, powerful practitioners in the Seven Stars realm could send out sword pellets capable of killing enemies 30 miles away. That was why the flying ship cannons could only be stationed in the middle guard and could fire only 8 or 9 times. Now a True Origin cannon can shoot 160 miles. It has increased fivefold." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor jumped in shock and cried out, 160 miles? Are you certain it is 160 miles? Shan Yusin nodded heavily. "It is 160 miles. Furthermore, after Cult Master Qin's improvements, the cannon barrel no longer heats up, and this is the most critical point. We can fire it as many times as we wish." Previously, the flying ships were positioned in the middle guard, but now they can form the vanguard and clear the path. Our army possesses over 200 flying ships, and each ship has 2 rows of True Origin cannons on its sides. Each row contains 8 cannons, with 4 more in the front and back of the ship, totaling 40 cannons per vessel. With more than 200 flying ships, that is 8 to 9,000 cannons, we can slaughter enemies from over 100 miles away, purging them wave after wave. We can push directly to the gates of their cities. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor drew in a sharp breath of cold air and murmured, "Hall Master Shan, this cannon of yours will save enormous amounts of rations and countless soldiers' lives." Shan Yusin bowed. "This is entirely the Cult Master's work. I dare not claim the credit." At that moment, Qin was drawing the formation blueprint of Heaven's Eyes. After finishing, he handed the design to an official of the Ministry of Works. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stepped forward to inspect it and asked suspiciously, "This appears to be a kind of pupil divine art. Did you apply a pupil divine art to the True Origin cannon?" Qin washed his brush and nodded. "The cannon's opening serves as the pupil, and the cannon's light is the gaze. This arrangement truly works." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was briefly stunned before replying, "Within the Imperial College's floor of heavenly records, there are over 100 pupil skills. Among them, the most powerful is called Sunshot, which even I may not be able to cultivate. I have recorded the formation markings of the Sunshot Divine Eyes. Could you construct such a massive cannon?" His vital chi surged outward as layer after layer of formation markings manifested, transforming into an incomparably intricate pupil. Qin studied it carefully. His body suddenly shrank as he stepped among the formation markings. After examining them, his body returned to its original size, and he landed upon the ground. This cannon would require many people to construct and at least 2 or 3 manufacturing workshops working together. Even then, only one could likely be completed within 2 months. Furthermore, this cannon would be enormous, far heavier than any spirit weapon. Where did Imperial Preceptor obtain such a complicated divine eye? "Great ruins. Eternal Peace," Imperial Preceptor replied in a deep voice. "Even I was shaken when I first witnessed this pupil technique, but can you discern its purpose?" Qin shook his head. "Slaying gods," Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said calmly. "If you can create it, you will become the #1 master of heavenly works beneath heaven. The cannon you construct might even be capable of killing gods." Qin immediately waved his hand and said with utmost sincerity, "I do not dare claim to be #1 in heavenly works. I am merely #2.